Hey everyone, welcome back to another devlog for A Rogue's Odyssey, my roguelike dungeon crawler that's being developed with the Godot engine. So to start things off, my plan was to organize some of my workflow to make development easier in the future, but before that I started by fixing a slight issue with my rocket launcher explosions. I didn't want the explosion damage to affect an enemy that was already hit by the projectile, so I added a different layer to handle the explosions. If an enemy has been hit by a rocket launcher projectile, this layer is deactivated for half a second, so the explosion hitbox doesn't hit him a second time. Then I spent a few minutes making an Excel table to keep track of my enemies and my items. If I want to check some stats quickly, I'll have everything in one place. Some days I feel like organizing all my stuff and having everything tidy, so I usually make the most out of them, since for the most part I find that tedious to do, but it does help a lot. Lastly for today, I made a cheat panel to help me in the future. I display all the stats here and I can change them if I want. If I hold Ctrl, they increment 10 times faster and can also change the weapon I'm holding, and show or hide the full floor minimap as if I have visited everything. It has now been nearly a week since the last update, but I had a rough schedule and today I decided to change the font of the game. The one I had was nice, but too fancy for the game I'm making. I feel like a pixel font would fit better. Then I spent the rest of the day implementing room drops. I made a base drop scene and got to work on a gold coin sprite. I made a fairly simple one with a shining animation to feel more alive and added it into the game. Then I made a spawn animation that is triggered after beating all the enemies in a room, and also added a small particle effect for when you pick it up. When you pick it up, it triggers the particle effect, you gain 50 gold and it deletes itself. After the gold coin, I added a key also. I wasn't planning on doing this yet, but I didn't have much time to start working on something different and was tired, so this was a simple task to do. I just made a new sprite with the animation not done yet, and added it into the game using the drop base node. I also added light to the drops to make them stand out more. Now I need to add the key as a currency too, since picking up the key has no effect yet, and I will determine what I have picked up using the group system. Today I continued working on the drops. I finished the key drop with an addition to the UI. Then I made the scenes and idle animations for the HP, the utility, and crystal drops. I made a function to determine what drop path is going to be picked to spawn, with different probabilities for each, and made them not spawn in the boss room. Instead, an item chest spawns in the middle of the room. Then I was done with the drops for now, and started working on the utility. The utility will be a grenade that will assist you throughout the game, but unlike your weapon, the ammo is not unlimited. It has 3 ammo that can be refilled with utility ammo drops. I made a base scene and a placeholder grenade sprite. The idea is that we will have multiple utility choices. You can throw them with a 1 second cooldown between uses, and they will have a timer to detonate, depending on what you will have. I will continue working on this later in the day. Okay, it has now been a few hours and I'm still working on this grenade. First, by pressing right click, I made it spawn the utility scene, which is in this case our grenade. The utility base scene holds a few variables, including the effect, which will be an explosion made with particles, the AoE size, and the sprite, which is an indicator for the explosion radius. The AoE size is just in case I have items that can increase this value. I also have the knockback that the explosion has, the damage it's going to deal, the speed of when the grenade is thrown, and finally the friction, which is the acceleration speed. The grenade also has a shadow to make it less confusing to see where it's actually going, a hitbox for the projectile and not the explosion itself, because the explosion's damage actually comes from the grenade effect, which is the particle system, along with a couple of hitboxes to hurt the player and the enemy. This particle system is spawned when the grenade timer times out. Finally, I added an animation player to make the grenade seem like it's gaining height during the throw. Alright, so I've still been working on the utility stuff. I made some shaking on the grenade animation before the explosion to help the player know when it's actually going to happen, and later on the sound effect will also reinforce this. Then I made the actual sprite for the grenade and made a nice little sprite to add in the overworld, so you can switch to it. This box is handled very similarly to the way I handle the weapons in the armory, but I needed to test if I could actually switch them, so I made a really quick second utility with pretty much every component as a placeholder. But the concept is a shockwave grenade that will deal a little damage and stun enemies for a brief amount of time. Tomorrow or so I will try to finish the shockwave grenade and maybe rework the AoE area. It just feels a bit cheap to me. I might try to remove the area color and leave the outline, or just remove everything altogether. Okay, been a while since the last update, but I should probably not procrastinate anymore, so here we go. I kept working on the shockwave grenade, I added a stun effect with some lightning particles and also made it actually stun the enemy, and so the player. The way the stun works is simple. I added this function to my global event script, which should work in other situations too. This is just pausing every child of a node that is not an area 2D to avoid pausing hurt and hitboxes, for the amount of time I want. On the following day, I made the airwave effect grow out instead of being constant. I made the sprite for the grenade and added your current weapon and utility on the HUD, because there was no indicator of what utility you currently had. And this ends the utility stuff for now. The next day, I changed yesterday's HUD positioning and put them on the bottom of the screen instead, and also connected the visibility of your items to the minimap. When you open up the minimap, you can also see your items, otherwise they are hidden, so as to not have the screen too cluttered. I did this by adding a boolean to the global event script called isInventoryOpen, which is set when I open or close the minimap, and the item's visibility depends on it. Then I finally added the death animation. As much as I like this, it has to go. I made this simple fall animation for the player and weapon, and then added a shrinking circle transition. This looked fine when I did it, but the next day it felt like something out of Looney Tunes, and I changed the pacing of it. Finally, yesterday I made a sprite for a backpack, to have a place for the items to go to that makes more sense than just disappearing there. And I started making the main menu. I changed my fonts once again, twice in this video, to these two, that I think look really nice together. And just made a very simple menu and also made the death menu. This is all very much in progress and is what I will be tackling today. I will hopefully update you in a few hours or tomorrow. Alright, I did some more improvements on the main menu, which I'm not too happy with, but I can't really be wasting time on this now. I tried making a background for it, but I'm not very good at this. I am happy with the buttons, but let's leave the rest for another time. I also made a switch from having a lot of text all over the overworld to having no text. I switched most of it for icons, and also made the tooltips be just the input to do the action, and it should be pretty self-explanatory. The only thing I will still need to have something other than the input is the shop to let you know the price of the items. After this I was a bit tired from all the UI stuff and made a new enemy for the game, the Spiderlong. I was trying to make something different at first, but I had no good results, so I just based it off the design from the Spiderwing to also have a recurring spider theme in this first stage. I know it looks awful, but it's fine for now. Later on I will probably redesign some of the enemies anyway. Also with this addition, I got into a more organized way of making my enemies. I made a base enemy scene, and I am also trying to get a state machine working where I can have different behaviors. I want making an enemy be like assembling Legos. I will have different pieces and I can join them together however I want, or make new ones that will fit the main piece. This is a much better way than just copy-pasting my Spiderwing code and changing what I need. I'm still working on this system, but at the moment it's working as intended with an idle and a chase state. I will try to finish the state machine specifically for this enemy and end the video on that. Here we are, the final update for this video. I managed to finish the Spiderlong in a way that I'm satisfied with for now. It only has 3 states. It's either idle, chasing or shooting. While idle, it's either stopped or wanders in a random direction and shoots every couple seconds at the player. The shooting just sets the velocity to 0 and plays the shoot animation. And I have 2 functions tied to this animation. One is for shooting, which just spawns a bullet targeting the player's current position. And the other to switch back to either idle or chase state, depending on the distance to the player. If the player is too close, it switches to chase state and follows the player until he's far enough to switch back to idle. It doesn't shoot at the player while chasing. This code should be reusable for other enemies if I decide to add any of these mechanics, which I probably will. After this, I quickly noticed how cheesy it can be to just shoot enemies from afar, especially in the future if I add stationary enemies that do nothing unless you are too close, so I added range to the weapons. I have a shadow to help you show that the bullet is dropping, and after reaching the ground it gets destroyed. Finally, I plugged this new stat into the cheat panel. And that's about it for this one. Now I'm either going to try and add some new enemies and traps and start making some enemy room presets, or add a new mechanic into the game that I've been thinking about for a while, to make the game differ from other games in the genre. Anyways, thank you for watching, and as always, I hope that you learned something from this video. Till next time.